So today I'm going to talk about this textual and contextual approaches to the interpretation. And I already briefed you this interpretation, and as you look on this slide, so you have to basically understand the approach. Just little bit, I will brief you about this previous lecture as well, so you can recall and connect it to this approaches to the interpretation. Okay, so as you can see in this image, the interpretation is seamless. Okay, so you to understand the things by looking at the cloud. Okay, as you know, in the previous time, the people used to look at the cloud and used to tell about the weather forecast, and without any kind of the technical help or the instruments. So this image is trying to say that. So you need to understand because you are looking at the sky, which is seamless. So here you need to understand in which context you are going to talk about. Is it clear? So now first we'll brief you about this political philosophy. Even I talked about it in the previous lecture as well. So basically, what is political philosophy? Political philosophy refers to branch of learning which is primarily concerned with moral and substantive dimensions of politics. So here the major focus is on where? On the morality and a form basis in reality and and this real politic and this political philosophy includes some of the central problems on which it is looking this political philosophy. So the first thing is the pursuit of the good life, how to lead a good life. The major focus is on that. And the next thing is the question pertaining to norms and values. What will be the norms and the values in the society to lead a good life? And it will differentiate between the good and the evil, what is right and what is wrong. How? The norms and on the basis of the norms and the values, virtue and vice, means and ends, whether the person will be used as a means or an end. So this is going to justify right or the wrong. And this political philosophy is looking into the vision for an ideal state, which Plato talked about, and the society will explain it. Uh, all these things in details when one by one we'll talk about the thinkers at that point of the time. And apart from that, if you will, the political philosophy also inquires into the foundation of political lives, grounds, how the political foundations are formed, and the grounds of political obligation, on which ground the people will oblige to the state, and by which means people are giving the legitimacy and the moral worthiness of different political system, which political system is more worthiness and more capable of taking care of the people. So this political philosophy makes use of philosophical and historical method in determining the goal of political, in the goal of public life. So the major part of political philosophy coincides with moral and social philosophy. So, as you remember, I discussed about this image in the previous lecture. And when I told you to interpret this image, so a lot of people interpreted this image in a different way. As someone told that this is a rebellion, someone told it is a symbol of the Red Cross Society, someone else among you said this is a seizure, or many other interpretations. So just by looking at this image, among you only, each and everyone has given different answers interpreted in a different way. Uh, so as this image is talking about, even it seems like this the red indicates you to be aware. Wherever having the red color symbol, it means that you need to be aware, careful. And even it suits leaves. So even if you see the small plant and if some animal has eaten the leaves of that, it will look like this. So without wasting much more time, we'll move on to this approaches of interpretation. So first of all, you need to understand what is approach, which is the basic thing. So this approach is concerned with the selection of a suitable method. You will, with the help of the approach, you will apply the certain method which is suitable to that. So basically, this uh, this method this method will help you to understand how to inquire. How are you going to inquire? What will be the process? Okay. And then the second thing comes in the approach, the focus of the study. So what will be the focus of the study? If you are going to just study about some particular problems or the topic, then you need to understand in that area. Suppose you are going to talk about the women empowerment, so you need to understand in the women empowerment, in which context, what are you trying to inquire in that, in which context, whether the political empowerment or in another context like the economic empowerment or in the context of the freedom. So all these things. So approaches to interpretation of classics are lesson. So you have to understand first, what do you mean by classic? Can anyone of you tell me, what do you mean by classics?
Traditional,
Okay. Traditional in which context?
like the old.
Yes, that is all right, but uh,
Norms.
norms, which norms?
uh, the kind of marriage in our society is going on since previous time, and it
Okay,
still is
actually,
going on.
I told you in the previous lecture, we need to understand the context. In which context I'm talking about, and we are discussing here. We are discussing the political philosophy. So you have, and the text of interpretation. So you have to answer in that context. This is also an interpretation. So in the form of the text. Anyone else? Pallavi, Kajol.
So classic can be defined as a prototype which can be used for further interpretation of any of the theories or
Text
resources.
or books, literature. Okay. Anyone else? So first, we'll talk about this classics. Classic refers to the great works of literature. You people must keep your notebooks along with you while sitting, and you must note it down some of the important things because otherwise you will miss it out. So the classics refers to the great works of literature, history, and philosophy, etc., which are acclaimed to be masterpiece and timeless. Like you must be aware about the writings of the Shakespeare. The people are reading it as a novel, and even in the English literature. Similarly, in the philosophy, the masterpiece, which is the one of the best writing and the timeless, its relevance will be always. It will, its relevance will not go away with the time. Just like in India, the Scotilia has written about the statecraft. So he has written many years ago, but still after so many centuries, and still its relevance is there, which is timeless, and the masterpiece writing. So that's why his writing is will be considered as classic. uh, Apart from this, each of these work is produced at a particular historical juncture. All of these writings has come in the history at a particular point of the time, and they deal with the perennial problems of human society. And what is in that, they dealt with the perennial problem which is going on, still there. Chanakya, Kautilya talked about the corruption and how to deal with that point of the time, but it's still relevant, and you can link with the today's time. And the Plato writings, Aristotle, the golden mean, which is still relevant today. They provide valuable insights into the human nature, and they are providing valuable insights to the human nature, human behavior, and human purpose. So they are regarded to be the relevant for all the ages all over the world. It's not like that thing is limited to the particular location of the geography or a particular country. It is relevant to all over the world. So is it clear what is classics?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
Any question?
sir, but if we say it is relevant to all over the world, we can also we see in the critics that it is more Eurocentrified and more towards European and uh, left countries, which are more towards, they are more biased towards their own country and their own uh, ethics which they live on.
So that's why
So
what to do and what not to do while the interpretation. When I talked about in the previous lecture, then I told you need to understand the context of the philosopher, the time at which he has written. Yes, you can critique it. It's there. So I'm coming to that point as well. It will be covered here as well. And again, we'll talk about this the article by the Terence Ball. It will be discussed already. I discussed half of the reading by or the article by this Terence Ball. Uh, just I'm giving you the little brief about him here. The Terence Ball, in his essay on history and the interpretation of the text, which I shared with you, uh, this writing of the Terence Ball as a chapter in the book, The Handbook of Political Theory, which edited by Goss and Kokathaus in 2004, has talked about the different schools of thought. In that, the Marxian interpretation, I told you this, even the totalitarian interpretation, and he talked about the psychoanalytical interpretation, feminist interpretation, Straussian interpretation, postmodernist interpretation, Cambridge New History, pluralist and problem driven interpretation. So, Here, this list is no means exhaustive. The list which I told you by the Terence Ball. In any
So
case, yes,
what is psychoanalytical interpretation?
that will be discussed in the upcoming unit. Already, I talked about the Marxist and totalitarian. So once I will complete this textual and the contextual, then we'll go there. Whatever the list I told you, according to the Terence Ball, is by no means exhaustive. So, in any case, these interpretations largely correspond to the various school of thought which is prevalent in the realm of political philosophy, and this would be most suited to the interpretation of social and political reality from the various points of view. So, if you look from this school of the interpretation, you will find that social and the political reality, which is coming out from various points of view. So, then we'll move on to this how to proceed for the interpretation. Having this certain setup of the rules, you have to apply that. So how will you proceed? So first you need to choose a particular text for reading. So first you need to select which text you are going to read. The first thing, then you have to consider the relative significance of textual and contextual approach. So as I told you, the first thing, when we have chosen a particular text for reading, after reading, the most practical way would be consider the relative significance of textual and contextual approaches. So then evolve a suitable strategy for interpretation. So you have to basically relate the which approach will be suitable for this text, whether the textual interpretation or whether the contextual interpretation. So these two approaches, and to apply this, first you need to, in this process, you have the clear cut understanding of the textual and the contextual approaches of the interpretation. Only then you will be able to decide whether you are going to apply, whether the textual approach is suitable or the contextual approach is suitable for the interpretation of the particular text. And and after this you will evolve a suitable strategy for interpretation, and you will apply the strategy for interpretation. It is important to note that a reminder is here before adopting either of these approaches. So it means the textual or the contextual approaches. We must identify beforehand as to which part of the text of the chosen author is fit for subjecting to textual approach. So even you have to look into that. So even in that text, the part you are going to interpret, read, so you have to make it clarify for this part which approach you are going to apply, whether this part is fit for the textual approach or not, or whether the first part you are going to read will be fit for the textual approach, and the upcoming part is the fit for the contextual approach, or it may be the first part is fit for the contextual approach and another part is fit for the textual approach. So it all depends upon your wisdom. And one of the most important thing, any inadvertence in this matter might lead to disastrous consequences. And if you will do the mistake, and without having the clarity of the textual and the contextual approach, and if you will not apply this You will not apply the proper or the suitable strategy for interpretation. Your interpretation may go in different direction, and it will be disastrous for the society, and you will not understand. And how? We'll give you some of the examples in upcoming slides. We'll explain it to you. So we'll move on to the first approach, that is the textual approach. Till now, do you have any question or the doubt? Tell me fast.
No, sir.
Okay. So, will the screen is visible to you people?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
So,
So, yes, yes, Pius, are you saying something?
no, sir. हम तो कुछ नहीं बोल रहे थे.
Okay. So, we'll see what is the textual approach, and we'll explain it to you. And in between, if you think you do not have the clarity about some of the terms which I will use, you must ask. So, this textual approach exemplifies the application of hermeneutics to the interpretation of classics. It employs what? We should focus on the language of the given text. So, in this textual approach, the focus is where? On the language of the text. Why? In order to understand its real meaning. Why will focus on the language of the text? Because we are going to understand its real meaning. And already I have explained you in the previous lecture about this hermeneutics and all these things. And just some time back, I explained you classics. Is that clear? And it is based on the belief that text of a classic contains the expression of eternal truth. There is belief. What? The classic text contains the expression of eternal truth, which is talking about the reality. The text should not be treated as an occasional response to the author's peculiar experience or to historical or sociological circumstances of his time. So it not be treated as an occasional circumstances or the occasional response to the author's peculiar experience. So one of the major exponent of this textual approach is Leo Strauss, and he was present in this world from 1899 to 1973. Strauss was the American philosopher, and he is the chief exponent of this textual approach. Thus, Strauss claimed what? The works of Plato, who is ancient Greek philosopher, and a handful of other authors contain the whole truth about the politics. And this is and it is accessible only to the fortunate few, and only few, the fortunate few people, few author able to access it, the writings of the Plato, Aristotle. However, it is by no means easy to find its real meaning. It's very difficult to find the real meaning. we must read this text in a special way. Whatever the text you are going to read, as I told you, how to proceed, the first thing is that you have to choose which text you are going to read. So we must read the text in a special way before interpreting its content. You do not need to interpret the content directly. Before that, you need to read the text in a special way. So, what Strauss talks about on the textual approach. So, first, we'll look on Strauss. Who is he and his life? Just few things. Strauss was a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany who migrated to United States of America. Why? Do you know the reason? Why at that point of the time he migrated? His timeline is 1899 to 1973. Do you have any idea why Strauss migrated as a refugee to United States
So
of America?
they were
Yes.
uttering genocide,
Okay.
mass
Anyone else?
genocide.
Yes, yes, yes. Anyone else? Yes, as Hassan said, Strauss was a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany who migrated to United States of America when the Hitler started persecution of the Jews in Germany. Then, so Hitler and his Nazi thugs come to power in Germany through liberal democratic system called Weimar Republic. So Hitler came into power how? Not by the dictatorship. Initially, he came through the process of liberal democratic system, which the system was called Weimar Republic in Germany. Strauss was convinced that Western type liberal democracy had no answer to the problem of humanity. So, by all this process, Strauss convinced himself what the Western model or the Western type of liberal democracy had no answer to the problems of humanity. So here the question comes: what is liberal democracy? Can any one of you tell me what is liberal democracy? Do you have any idea about this concept, liberal democracy? Yes, unmute yourself and speak out. Yes or no? Fast.
Sir, it is a form of government in which representative democracy operates under the principles of classical liberalism.
Okay. Uh, all right. Anyone else? Dipti,
Sir, it is a kind of representative democracy.
it is a
Kind of representative
kind
democracy
of representative.
for protection of individual liability.
Okay, for the protection of individual liability. All right. Anyone else? Kajal, Dipti, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Can you speak on the idea of liberal democracy?
Sir,
I think political power is limited by the rule of law.
Okay.
And
So whatever you are saying, you must remember it, okay? Because I'm going to explain so you can link it with them and you can add few more things while explaining. Anyone else want to speak, or shall I move on to the topic? Okay. So now I will explain you liberal democracy. First of all, you need to understand liberal democracy refers to the system of governance. It is it is referring to whom or what? To the system of governance based on the principles of liberalism and democracy. So we can say that the liberal democracy is the system of governance which is based on the principle of liberalism and democracy. So now we'll see. Liberalism seeks to mold human relations into the market relations. How? How liberalism is molding human relations into the market relations? By evolving such a rules and procedures. So it is evolving such some rules and procedures that would ensure the reconciliation of conflicting interests. So in this liberal democracy, liberalism seeks to mold human relation into market relations. It is molding the human relations into the market relations. How? By evolving such rules and procedures, and that would ensure the reconciliation of the conflicting interest. And if they're having any conflicting interest, then it can be reconciliated by the process of the rules and the procedures. So now the second key word, democracy. Democracy employs what? Democracy employs the formation of a government. And how? With the consent of the ordinary people. The government will be formed. How? By the consent of the ordinary people. And how the ordinary people are giving their consent. As you see in India having the democracy, and how the government is getting formed. So here, we the people of India, are giving our legitimacy to the government. How? By the means of vote. We are electing the representatives who is ruling and who is making the laws on behalf of us. So, in a liberal democracy, people can exchange their votes for the policies of their choice. As in a marketplace, they exchange their money for the goods of their choice. So, liberal democracy is similarly like as we are going into the market, and whatever the goods we want, we are buying the goods and paying the price for it. So we are exchanging the goods with the money. Similarly, in this liberal democracy, people can exchange their votes for the policies of their choice. So basically, you are doing what? In the election, in the democratic setup, you are voting, and then in this process, you are looking into the agenda of the political party, what they are going to offer you. So that's why before the election they comes with this the party manifesto, and they says that "Ki, I'm going to this and that abrogation, just like the BJP, which is stated will abrogate the article 370 and repeal the article 35A of JNK, will construct the Ram Mandir and many other things. So all of this, and then the people looking into the manifesto of the political party, they are voting for it. So is it clear? And they are guided only by the self-interest. And here in the liberal democracy, the it's guided only by their self-interest. And how you are voting, because you are thinking about yourself, you are thinking about your interest, along with which political party is suitable to you, who is going to fulfill your desires and the larger interest. So that's why you are looking for your own interest getting fulfilled, and that's why they are guided only by their self-interest and not by any higher moral values. So, is it clear to each one of you what is liberal democracy and what is the basic idea about the liberal democracy? Yes, Fakir, you are trying to say anything? Otherwise, mute yourself. Yes. Do you have any doubt over the concept liberal democracy?
Oh. Sir,
Yes,
could you please tell me the concept of this line to mold human relation into market relation?
human relation into the market relation. Okay.
Yes, is to mold. See.
Okay. Okay. I told you the two things. Liberal democracy is a system of governance which is based on the principle of liberalism and democracy. That's why you find the term liberal democracy. So I explain you first the liberalism, the first word of this liberal democracy. So liberalism seeks to mold. It is trying to mold what the human relations into the market relations, and how the human relations will be molded uh, into the market relations. For that, they will evolve certain rules and the procedures. So, how can you participate in the market when you have the money? If you do not have the purchasing power, you cannot. You will be indirectly excluded from the market. The state says that everyone is welcome to the market. If you do not have the money in your pocket, will you able to do anything in the market? Will you able to buy or sell? To be the part of the
No.
market, either to to be the part of the market, either you will be the seller or the buyer. If you are the seller, then you must have the goods to the sell, and if you are the buyer, then you must have the capital to purchase something from there. And how this liberalism is molding human relations into the market relations by evolving such rules and procedures. They have made certain setup of the rules. You can mute yourself. And by this way, what will happen? It will ensure the reconciliation of the conflicting interest. And if there is any conflict of the interest in the market, it will be reconciliated. How? Just like that, it's very simple. You go, you pay and buy. And if you do not, you can return. But you cannot fight over that. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else? Do you have any confusion or doubt over this? Or otherwise, we'll move ahead. Tell me fast.
Uh, sir,
Yes, Kajal.
sir, do they believe in socialism? Like, uh,
It is
lib-
totally different. I'm talking about liberal democracy. Liberalism and socialism are different things, different school, different ideologies. Liberalism is individual centric. Socialism is talking about the welfare of the masses.
yeah, sir, you talked about the like capitalism, no? So I think,
Capitalism, yes, because I talked about in the context of the market.
uh, yeah,
We'll explain you the socialism at last. Okay.
okay,
So Strauss, what was the point of the Strauss here? Because of this, when the Strauss has come to the power, the Nazi Hitler has come to the power. So then Strauss got convinced he no answer to the problem of humanity, and he saw the history of the modern Western liberal political thought as a history of degeneration and enfeeblement. Uh, so he saw what? The history of the modern Western liberal political thought as a story of degeneration, which degraded, lowered, and enfeeblement, which has weakened and deprived of a strength, and having no strength in this idea. And he contrasted it with the vigor of classics Greek and Roman political thought that came to conclusion that we should look for the remedy of the ills of the modern society in the classical political philosophy. So even at that point of the time when the Plato written, so at that point of the time he compared this situation, I mean at that point of the time when the Hitler was ruling, to the previous one when the Plato was writing. The similar situation was there. His master Socrates was persecuted, given the death penalty. And he is saying what? To find the remedy or the solution of this problem or any kind of the problem of the modern society, we need to look into the classical political philosophy. In his famous essay of the Strauss on political philosophy and the crisis of our time, he has written a famous essay, Political Philosophy and the Crisis of Our Time, uh, which included in the post-behavioral era, edited by George A. Graham and George W. Carey in 1972. And in this, Strauss declared what? The crisis of our time is a consequence of the crisis of political philosophy. So Strauss stated, whatever the crisis is going on at this point of the time when Strauss was there, from 1899 to 73 is the timeline of the Leo Strauss, uh, the year in which he took the birth and the year in which he died. And at that point of the time, when this crisis was there, the Hitler rule, so he stated it is the consequence of the crisis of political philosophy, and how to come out from that, and the remedy for that. And for the remedy, we need to look into the classical political philosophy. So now the next question comes. Strauss and his follower sought to diagnose and cure the maladies of the present in the realm of classical political philosophy. Strauss and his followers, whomsoever are following the Leo Strauss, try to diagnose and how we can diagnose the problem of the modern society and cure the maladies of the present, whatever the problems are there in the today's society, only by looking into the realm of classical political philosophy. They realized that the history of political thought was full of valuable insights that would guide us to find our way during the prevailing crisis. So Strauss and his follower realized what? If we look into the history of political thought, and the history of the political thought is full of valuable insights, you will find abundance number of ideas, seamless or the way, seamless ideas, and that will guide us to find our way how to deal with the prevailing crisis. They repudiated the historicist view that the different ages have different mentalities and outlooks, which were no longer relevant to the present age. He criticized and rejected the idea of the historist view, what the historians are stating. The different stages have the different ages have different mentalities. If the people of that point of the time and the people of the today's time having different mentalities and outlooks, which are no longer relevant to the present age. So he's criticizing the historians' views, and he's saying it is important to us. So they argued what? That if we could decipher the real meaning of the encoded message of the old philosophy, who were fearful of the persecution by the rulers of their time. As you know, earlier the philosophers were writing, but they are not coming into the public domain because they will be persecuted. And some of them were persecuted, like the Socrates. So we need to encode the masses of the old philosophers, especially who were fearful of persecution by the rulers of their times. And we would be
So,
certainly, just a second, we would be certainly benefited by the extremely valuable knowledge embodied therein. So Strauss and their followers are sure uh, we will be benefited by the valuable knowledge which they have written in that particular text. Apart from this, Leo Strauss warned the interpretation of ancient text involves reading between the lines to reveal its real. And how will you reveal its real? Albeit it's hidden, which is uh, hidden as if it were written in a kind of invisible ink. So you have to look, which is you have to find in between the words its real meaning. It means what? If we come across an intriguing statement of an author, we should try to determine what its meaning in the light of his line of argument, which may be found in his own writing. So this may be illustrated by some examples of the writings of the various philosophers. So we'll not go there. Just we'll discuss about that in the upcoming lecture. Like the Aristotle said, managed by nature, the political animal, and the state is prior to man. So we will decipher its meaning and what did he mean. So these things will be discussed in next lecture. Yes, some of you